No questions so far. Hope you're hanging in with me. All right, let's move on to our financial planning topic. And let me get set up here. All right, so if you're just joining us, this is the Financial 15, and today's Financial 15 is the tips for younger investors, and this is the financial planning portion of of my weekly webinar. So every week, just about on Tuesday mornings, we spend about an hour or 45 minutes to an hour together, and we talk about market updates for the last week or month. We talk about IRA distribution issues and strategies that come out of the Ed Slott Master Lead Advisor Group. And I talk about a financial planning strategy or issue that I think would be beneficial to you, and that is the Financial 15. So let's start with the Financial 15. And if you're just joining us on YouTube for the first time, you're going to want to subscribe because I do these videos often, nearly every week, and we have special webinars throughout the year and classes and things like that. So I want you to have access to these things for your own education and growth. So I'm just setting up here. I'm going to be putting my tablet down so I can draw on it. So you may see me looking down. That doesn't mean I'm checking my text messages or anything like that. But let's go. Some of these can be, seem just basic and logical. But again, I get these questions. Well, what about first of all, nobody has ever come into my office and said, gee, I wish I would have waited a little longer to do this. Most people say, I wish I would have known about tax-efficient planning and Roth conversions, 10, 15 years ago. I wish I would have known about this investment strategy that you used many years ago. So nobody says, geez, I wish I would have waited another 5 years. But what we know is we all, looking back, most of us would have done things a little differently. So I talk about these critical items. There are critical items that you've learned or you're learning now that are going to have a major impact or could potentially have a major impact on your retirement plan and the enjoyment and the funding of your life during retirement. And if you knew these critical items earlier, you may have made different decisions. Well, you know them now and you can make you can kind of right the ship and make those decisions. But we want to give our younger investors an opportunity to know these critical items now. So first, let's talk about habits. Investing is a habit, just like anything else. It's really easy to get caught up in paying for something else, liquidating investment portfolios. Listen, I was guilty of this in my 30s. I guess it was my early 30s. I liquidated some positions to pay off a debt that I thought it was just hanging over my head. It wasn't, looking back, it wasn't anything significant. The interest rate wasn't outrageously high. It was just something that bothered me. So I liquidated some positions to pay off that debt. I famously sold Amazon in 2005, 2006. My wife reminds me about it. Not too often, but I do pay attention when she reminds. But I bought Amazon in the 40s, and that is something I of course wish I would have held on to, even though I own some now. But I would have liked a lower entry point of that. So you've got to set these goals and develop these habits of setting money aside. When I was in my 20s, I remember reading a book called The Richest Man in Babylon, and maybe you folks have heard about this or read it or listened to it. And it simply talks about the benefit of setting money aside. And they use the example of 10% or a portion. I think it was 10%. It was many years ago, but setting aside money and investing it and having that money create new money for you and compounding. That's compound interest. And I'm going to talk about strategies here. I didn't develop a chart showing compound interest. We all know the benefit of compound interest, and compound interest can work for you or it can work against you. It works for you in investing. It works against you with debt. So you want to set these goals, and they should be, you should have long-term goals, but you should also have short-term goals. I remember one of my friends when I was in my 20s, and he was honestly one of the ones who got me into investing to begin with. He told me that he had been saving his money. He worked a lot. He's no longer with us. It's really a shame, but He died very, very young. But anyway, so he was working a lot, and he was setting his money aside, and he had a little celebration when he reached $10,000. And I remember at the time thinking, my gosh, he's put away a lot of money. I was really, really impressed. So we talked about how he was investing and whatnot. And he had goals, and that I'm going to have a celebration at $10,000. That was a great goal. And you should make it automatic. But again, long-term goals and short-term goals. So a $10,000, have a celebration. What you identify what you want or what you need at retirement or certain stages in your life, and set that goal. And we're going to talk about how you do that. But make it automatic. People are successful in saving in their 401k plans because it's an automatic thing. It's not only automatic, but you don't see it. You don't see the funds come out of your paycheck and go into the 401k plan. I'm sure there are studies out there, but I am 100% willing to bet a significant sum that if 401k plans, although they're voluntary, if money had to be transferred every pay period into the 401k plan manually, people would have a much, much smaller 401k plans than they actually have. Of course, retirement plans are still underfunded and all those things, but people have saved significant amounts of money in their 401k plans, mostly because it's an automatic process. You set that goal, you identify what you want to set aside, and it happens automatically. So make it automatic, set those goals, short-term and long-term. Avoid debt. It's really easy to get caught up on the debt train when things are easy to get. If you got a half-decent credit score, you can buy just about anything. There are different times when credit is easier to attain than others, but it doesn't. Most people focus on the monthly cost of something and the relative or sometimes absolute immediate gratification. So you've got to work against that a little bit. And here's one of the tools I found to help that. Compare your debt with a risk-free rate of return. So what does that mean? Someone recently asked me, they said, I have $80,000 worth of debt on a home equity line of credit. Home equity line of credit. Home equity line of credit. I am now paying 8% on that $80,000. Should I pay that off? So they have $150,000 in their money market account. Should they pay off that $80,000? So I said, well, think of it this way. You're earning, let's just call it 5% in the money market. If I told you that you could earn 8% in a money market, how quickly would you move that $150,000 or a portion of it into that 8% money market? And of course, the answer was, well, immediately. I would move that immediately because it's 3% more interest. Well, folks, if you take that $150,000 and you pay off that $80,000, isn't that just like earning an 8% rate of return on that $80,000? And the answer, of course, is yes. So this is interest only. This is a situation where there is no amortization schedule. So, there are certain things you have to consider with that. So it's, because if it's late in a mortgage, you could be paying more principal than interest. But I'm talking about a home equity line of credit. I'm talking about credit cards. I'm talking about car loans, things like that. And I with any mortgage, I do an analysis, but, a lot of times it makes sense for the mortgage as well. But you're talking about a risk-free rate of return. Because paying off that home equity line of credit at 8% is well above a money market rate, even at today's rate at 5%. But somebody might say, well, what about the stock market? You just said the stock market outperformed the money markets by double the amount. But the difference is that's a risk associated rate of return. So if you said, and that might be okay for you, you might say, well, geez, if I take that same $80,000 and put it in the stock market and I'm 25, 30 years old and I know I'm not going to need that for 20 years, well, you really got a really, really great chance that you're going to do well over that 8% in the stock market. So it might make sense for you to say, well, I'm going to keep it in there because I'm going to return that. But I'm talking about sitting in, you got $150,000 sitting in a money market. Does it make sense to pay it off at 8%. So again, you could say, well, I can make much more in the stock market, but that is at risk associated rate of return. You have to take risk if it's the S&P 500, you could be up 20%, down 20% in any given year. And that is much different than a risk-free money market, CD, U.S. Treasury bond. So what I always think about with these things, and what I found helps people, is saying, okay, well, if I had an 8% CD right now, or I had an 8% money market, how fast would you move that money? So that helps you avoid debt sometimes. Not only avoid it, but helps make good decisions about paying it off. Hope that makes sense. Invest as much as possible. Invest as much as possible. This may seem really basic, but, I'm trying to erase this. Hold on, that mark I just made. Stay with me a second. Okay. So, but again, there has to be a goal involved. These tips are for younger investors. So invest as much as possible. Set aside your fund money and set aside your investment money. It becomes, the investing becomes addictive. So even if you start small, even if you're as much as possible as $100 a month, even if you're as much as possible as $25 a month, or $10 a month. It's much easier to invest today than it was when I was 25 years old. If you're 25 years old, or if you're 35 years old, now you can open an account with, Robinhood, Vanguard, any of them. And with Robinhood, you can even buy partial shares of a stock position if you want. And many, ETFs, exchange traded funds, are plentiful. You could be very targeted in the type of investments that you have. But invest as much as possible, and that as much as possible will grow over time. These are goals. Again, set your goals. Shoot for 10% of your income. If you make $50,000 a year and you're able to save $5,000 a year, that's wonderful. And I think you can do it if you make it automatic and you set those goals and you review them on a regular basis. And see down years as a positive when you're investing earlier in life. So don't get discouraged if you put in $5,000, you open up your statement, which you should do on a regular basis, and it's down to $4,000. If you don't need that money for several years, then you should consider that a reinvestment opportunity generally. Maximize your contributions to your retirement plans. So currently today, if you're under 50, which is what we're talking about, your maximum contribution to your retirement plans, if you have a 401k or a 403b, is $22,500, plus whatever company match you get. That goes up another $500 in 2024. That should be another goal. Shoot to maximize your retirement plan contributions. That is not easy, and I experienced it. When I was younger, new family, young family, trying to raise that family, and always maximizing the 401k contributions. There were times I wanted to say, well, geez, if I just pulled that back a little bit, but it pays off in spades later in life. So that's another goal. Maximize your retirement plan contributions. Use your Roth option where it makes sense. So for most people, when you're younger and you have lower incomes, certainly that Roth contribution makes sense if you have a Roth 401k or Roth 403b, or now Roth Simple, Roth SEP IRA, use Roth where it makes sense. And that, of course, is different for everybody. So you should talk to a tax planner, tax advisor about it. But listen, when you're investing, pay attention to fees. There was just one of the largest employers in the world just fined. Geez Louise, I can't remember the name of the company, but they were just fined over excessive fees in their retirement plan. Oh, it's killing me. I can't remember but they were just fined for excessive fees in their retirement plan, and that happens consistently. So pay attention to the cost of things that you're investing in. Pay attention to fees in your retirement plan, in your IRAs. I wrote here the phantom costs and taxes, these turnover costs. We talked about this several months ago. Learn how to evaluate your investments for costs. The first and easiest thing is an expense ratio of a mutual fund. it's very, very hard to choose good mutual funds. We spend a lot of time screening mutual funds to find the few that really meet our screens and that are any good. So it may make sense as an individual investor and as a younger person, if you don't have those tools, to just use an exchange traded fund. But you also have to look at the expenses of those types of investments. So pay attention to their fees or your retirement plan. Retirement plans have fees, and sometimes they can be much, much higher than you think. And pay attention to your IRAs and these turnover costs and cash drag. Turnover costs is when the money manager, the fund manager, turns over their positions a lot in their mutual funds, and that can cause capital gains tax and other costs, even trading costs within the fund. And cash drag is mutual funds have to keep a significant amount of cash on hand for redemptions. That's people selling out of the fund. And that isn't always optimized. We spend a lot of time individually going over our cash reports to make sure that clients aren't sitting in what we call cash for too long. And because we want to use it, in a money market, put it in a money market account so they earn more interest. Today, more than ever, there's a big spread, a big difference between the cash holdings and the money market accounts. So that can also affect the efficiency of your investment. So pay attention to fees, pay attention to the efficiency of your investments. Consider a cash value life insurance or life insurance retirement plan. This is one area. So tax efficient planning, financial planning in general, but funding a life insurance policy or cash value life insurance policy, that is something I hear all the time. People say, I wish I would have done this when I was much younger. Why does that make a difference? Well, it's time in, right? That's an investment. You're using it as an investment that grows tax-free over time. It actually grows tax-deferred, comes out tax-free if it's structured the right way. I have that caveat. It has to be a properly structured cash value life insurance or life insurance retirement plan. But nearly everybody I've talked to about this said, well, geez, it would have been better if I would have done it when I was younger. So that's another critical item that can have a significant impact. So learn it now or teach her. I know that not many 25-year-olds are watching this YouTube video right now. I hope you are. But you may have children or grandchildren, you folks, who this could benefit, and share it with them. But consider a cash value life insurance or life insurance retirement plan early on, because not only will your cost of insurance be lower, what it costs to give you that death benefit that must be associated with the life insurance, but you have longer time to invest in the policy. And when, hopefully at the end of your working years, you're going to have a lot of money that's available tax-free if you do it right to take out of that life insurance policy. And if God forbid something happens to you along the way, you've helped to take care of your heirs and the people that are important to you by having that life insurance policy.